Jake Morrison crouched behind the broken concrete wall. His rifle felt heavy in his hands. 3 years had passed since the aliens came to Earth. 3 years since everything changed. The Zephyrians had tall bodies like glass people. Their skin looked like crystal in the sunlight. They could read minds and speak without moving their lips. When they first appeared in the sky above every major city, humans thought they came in peace. That hope died quickly. The war lasted only 6 months. Human weapons could barely scratch their ships. Their energy beams could cut through tanks like paper. Cities burned. Millions died. The survivors became slaves. Now Jake led a small group of fighters in what used to be Denver. The city was mostly ruins now. Broken buildings reached toward the sky like broken teeth. Weeds grew through the streets. The aliens had taken what they wanted and left the rest to rot. Lisa Morrison, Jake's younger sister, lay flat beside him. She used to work with communications for the old Earth Defense Force. Now she helped coordinate attacks between different resistance groups. Her dark hair was tied back, and dirt smudged her face. "The supply depot is just ahead," she whispered. "2 guards at the front, maybe more inside." Jake nodded. The depot held food and medical supplies meant for human slaves. If they could steal even a small amount, it would feed their group for weeks. Ryan Carter checked his scanner from behind another piece of rubble. The young man had worked with computers before the war. Now he used alien technology against them, when he could make it work. "I'm reading 4 heat signatures inside, 2 more patrolling the back." Claire Johnson adjusted her medical bag. She had been studying to become a doctor when the invasion happened. Now she patched up fighters and tried to keep sick children alive with whatever medicine they could find. "Remember, we need those medical supplies. People are dying without them." Tony Rodriguez smiled grimly as he checked his explosives. The former construction worker had learned to make bombs from whatever materials he could scavenge. "Don't worry, Doc. We'll get what we need." Jake looked at each member of his team. These 4 people had become his family over the past 3 years. They had saved his life many times. He had saved theirs. They trusted each other completely. "Everyone knows the plan," Jake said quietly. "Ryan disables their communications. Tony creates a distraction at the back. Lisa and Claire grab the supplies. I cover the exit. In and out in 5 minutes." They moved like shadows through the ruins. Years of fighting had made them experts at staying hidden. The Zephyrian guards were tall and elegant, but they were not as careful as they should have been. They thought humans were too weak and stupid to be a real threat. That mistake had cost them many supply depots over the years. Ryan reached the communication array first. His fingers worked quickly over the alien controls. He had learned their symbols through trial and error. The device went dark. Tony slipped around to the back of the building. A small explosion echoed from that direction. The guards at the front turned and ran toward the sound. Jake and the others rushed inside. Boxes of food and medical supplies filled the warehouse. Claire began stuffing medicine into her bag, while Lisa grabbed protein bars and water purification. "Tablets. 30 seconds, Jake called out, watching the entrance. That was when everything went wrong. The front door exploded inward. Zephyrian soldiers poured through, their energy weapons already charging. More came through the back entrance. The explosion had been a trap. "It's an ambush," Lisa shouted. Jake fired his rifle at the nearest alien. The bullet sparked off an energy shield that glowed around the creature's body. The Zephyrian pointed its weapon at him. Jake dove sideways as a beam of light burned through the air where he had been standing. Tony's voice crackled over their radio. "They were waiting for us. Someone told them we were coming." A human figure stepped through the front entrance. Jake recognized him immediately. Peter Walsh had been part of their group until 6 months ago. He wore clean clothes now and had put on weight. A Zephyrian officer walked beside him like he was an equal. "I'm sorry, Jake," Peter said, though he did not look sorry at all. "They offered me a better life, real food, a warm place to sleep. All I had to do was tell them when you would attack." Rage filled Jake's chest. "You sold us out. You sold out our own species." Peter shrugged. "The war is over, Jake. We lost. It's time to accept that." The battle was short and brutal. Ryan fell first, an energy beam burning through his chest. He was dead before he hit the ground. Tony tried to reach them, but more aliens blocked his path. Jake heard him scream before the sound cut off. Claire stood back to back with Jake, firing her pistol at the advancing enemies. "There are too many of them." Jake saw Lisa trapped behind some boxes. 3 aliens were closing in on her position. She looked at him across the warehouse. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she tried to smile. "Take care of yourself, big brother," she called out. An energy beam hit her in the chest. She fell backward, her hand reaching toward Jake as the light faded from her eyes. "Lisa!" Jake screamed. He tried to run to her, but something struck him from behind. Electricity coursed through his body. His muscles locked up and he collapsed to the floor. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Peter Walsh's face, looking down at him. The traitor was counting alien coins in his palm. Jake woke up in a metal cage. The walls were smooth and gray. A soft vibration told him he was on a ship. His head pounded and his body ached from the stun weapon. Other humans filled cages around him, men, women, and children from Earth. All of them looked thin and afraid. Some cried quietly. Others stared at nothing with empty eyes. "Where are we going?" Jake asked the man in the cage next to him. The older man had scars on his arms and neck. "Viridian Prime, the alien homeworld. Some of us will be sold as slaves. The strong ones go to the fighting pits for entertainment." Jake looked at his hands. They had taken his weapons and his radio, but they could not take his memories of Lisa's last smile or his hatred for the creatures who had killed his team. He would find a way to make them pay, even if it killed him. The prison ship flew through space toward an alien world. In the darkness of his cage, Jake Morrison began to plan his revenge. The prison ship flew through space for 3 months. Jake learned to count the days by the meals they brought. Thin soup and hard bread twice a day, just enough to keep the prisoners alive. His cage was small and cold. He could sit or lie down, but not stand up straight. Other humans surrounded him in their own cages. They whispered sometimes when the guards were not watching. Stories about Earth, plans that would never work. Hope that grew smaller each day. Jake tried to organize an escape during the 2nd month. He convinced 12 other prisoners to work together. They planned to overpower a guard and take his weapons. The plan failed. The aliens were too fast and too strong. As punishment, the aliens moved Jake to solitary confinement. They put him in a tiny metal box in the deepest part of the ship. No light, no other humans, just darkness and the soft hum of the engines. At first, the loneliness nearly drove him crazy. He talked to himself to stay sane. He told stories about Earth to the empty air. He sang songs his grandmother had taught him when he was young. After a week in the dark, he heard something that made him stop talking. Someone was crying. The sound came through the air vents above his cell, soft and musical, but filled with sadness. It was not a human sound. The voice was too pure, too much like singing even when it wept. Jake listened for a long time. The crying continued night after night. During the ship's day cycle, everything was quiet. But when the lights dimmed for night, the sobbing began again. On the 10th night, Jake could not stand it anymore. He spoke softly toward the vent. "Hey, are you okay up there?" The crying stopped immediately. Silence filled the darkness. Jake waited, then tried again. "I know you can hear me. I don't know who you are, but you sound hurt, maybe scared." Still no answer. But he could sense someone listening. "My name is Jake," he said to the darkness. "I'm from a planet called Earth. It's a beautiful world mostly. We have blue skies and white clouds, trees that change colors in the autumn, rain that smells clean and fresh." He paused, remembering. "I had a sister named Lisa. She loved to watch the sunset from the roof of our building. She said it looked like the sky was on fire, but in a good way." A soft sound came from the vent. Not crying this time. More like someone taking a careful breath. Jake continued talking. He described the mountains around Denver, the way snow looked on the peaks in winter, how flowers bloomed in spring meadows. He talked about his team, about Claire's gentle hands, when she treated wounded fighters, about Ryan's jokes when things looked hopeless. Night after night, Jake spoke to the darkness. He shared memories of home. He recited poems he remembered from school. He sang lullabies his mother had sung to him and Lisa when they were children. Slowly, carefully, a voice began to answer him. It was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, musical and strange, but somehow comforting. The voice spoke broken human words, as if she had learned the language but was not used to using it. Your sister, she was kind? Jake's heart jumped. After weeks of silence, someone was talking to him. Yes, Lisa was the kindest person I knew. She always helped people even when it was dangerous. I have had sister too. She was older, strong like mother. I am weak. Why do you think you're weak? A long pause. I do not like the war. Mother says this makes me soft, foolish. She sends me away because I ask, why must other people suffer? Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold cell. Your mother? Who is your mother? She is queen, ruler of all. She decides who lives, who dies. I tell her maybe humans have hearts, souls. She becomes angry, says I am a child who does not understand. Jake stared up at the vent in shock. He was talking to an alien princess, the daughter of the queen who had ordered Earth's destruction. His first instinct was anger. This creature's family had killed Lisa, had killed billions of humans, had turned his world into a graveyard. But the voice in the darkness sounded so sad, so alone. What's your name? Jake asked quietly. Lyra. It means singing star in your language, I think. That's a pretty name. Lyra, why are you on this ship? Mother says I must see what happens to enemies of empire. Must learn to be strong like her. But I see cages full of your people and I cry. Guards tell Mother I am disgrace. Jake closed his eyes. Even in his anger, he could hear the pain in her voice. Lyra, what you're feeling isn't weakness. It's called compassion. It means you care about other people's suffering. Compassion, she repeated slowly. This is good thing? Yes. It's one of the best things any person can have. It means you have a good heart. They talked every night after that. Lyra asked questions about Earth, about humans, about concepts she had never learned. Love, friendship, hope, forgiveness. Jake explained them as best he could. In return, Lyra told him about Zephyrian society, how the strong ruled over the weak, how showing mercy was considered a flaw, how she had grown up feeling like something was wrong with her because she could not enjoy causing pain. On my world, we are taught that power is everything, Lyra said one night, that ruling others proves we are superior. But when I hear your stories of Earth, I think maybe being kind is harder than being cruel. Maybe it takes more strength. Jake smiled in the darkness. You're very wise, Lyra. Wiser than a lot of people from my world. Jake, will you tell me more about music? The songs you sing are beautiful. We have music, but it is different. Yours has something mine does not. What's that? Hope. Even sad songs from your world have hope in them. So Jake sang for her. Old folk songs about home and loss and love. Children's songs about dreams coming true. Battle hymns about standing up for what was right even when the odds were hopeless. Lyra learned to hum along with some of the simpler melodies. Her voice mixed with his in the darkness, human and alien harmonies that should have been impossible. During the day, Jake was alone with his thoughts. He knew he should hate this alien princess. Her people had destroyed everything he loved, but talking to her had become the only light in his world of darkness. She was not responsible for her mother's choices. She was just a young person trying to understand right from wrong in a society that had never taught her the difference. "Jake," Lyra said on their last night before reaching her homeworld. "When we arrive, they will take you to the arena. You will have to fight for entertainment of the nobles. I know. I will be there, in the royal box with Mother. I wanted you to know that when you see me, I will not look happy. I must pretend to enjoy the games or Mother will be even more angry with me." "I understand, Lyra, but I want you to know. Talking with you has shown me that there is another way to live. A better way. You have given me something I never had before." "What's that?" "A friend." Jake felt his throat tighten. "You're my friend too, Lyra, no matter what happens tomorrow." The ship's engines changed their pitch. They were entering orbit around the alien homeworld. Jake's journey into hell was about to begin, but for the first time since Lisa died, he was not completely alone. Somewhere in this vast ship, an alien princess carried a piece of human compassion in her heart. It was not much, but sometimes not much was enough to change everything. Viridian Prime was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. The alien homeworld hung in space like a giant jewel. Cities made of crystal and light covered its surface. Ships moved between floating platforms in the sky like schools of metal fish. The prison transport landed at a massive facility outside the capital city. Guards in flowing robes herded the human prisoners into groups. Some went to slave markets, others to work camps. The strongest and most defiant were selected for the fighting pits. Jake was among those chosen for the arena. They put him in a stone cell beneath the Grand Colosseum. The walls were carved from some kind of blue rock that seemed to glow with inner light. Other fighters shared the underground chambers, humans mostly, but also aliens from other conquered worlds. A four-armed creature from a planet called Thresh sat in the corner of Jake's cell. Its name was Core, and it had been fighting in the arena for 2 years. "The secret is to make it entertaining," Core explained in broken human speech. "Kill too quickly, crowd gets bored. Die too quickly, you are no longer useful. Fight well, show courage, sometimes they let you live." Jake learned to fight with weapons he had never seen before. Energy blades that could cut through steel, plasma shields that could block most attacks, projectile weapons that fired bolts of concentrated light. The training was brutal. Many prisoners died during practice sessions. The guards did not care. There were always more fighters arriving on transport ships. Jake's first real fight was against a Nexus warrior. The insectoid alien had razor-sharp claws and moved faster than any human could. Jake barely survived by using the creature's speed against it, causing it to run into a wall and stun itself. The crowd cheered, not because they cared about Jake, but because he had provided them with excitement. Fight after fight, Jake survived. He learned to read the crowd, to give them the spectacle they wanted. A close victory here, a dramatic comeback there. Always just enough entertainment to stay alive one more day. But he never forgot why he was there. Every night he planned how he might escape, how he might find weapons, how he might make the aliens pay for what they had done to Earth. After 6 months in the arena, the guards came to Jake's cell with special announcement. "Tomorrow you fight in the Grand Games," the head guard said. His voice carried the musical quality all Zephyrians had. "The Queen herself will attend. You will face a Krillian war beast. This will be your final performance." Jake knew what that meant. The Krillians were a warrior race from the Outer Rim. Their war beasts were the size of elephants, with hide-like armor plating and claws that could shred metal. No human had ever survived a fight against one. This was not a fight. This was an execution disguised as entertainment. The night before the Grand Games, Jake could not sleep. He thought about Lisa, about his team, about all the humans suffering across the galaxy. He thought about Lyra, wondering if she was somewhere in the crystal city above. The morning came too soon. Guards dragged Jake from his cell and forced him into ceremonial armor. The metal was lightweight but provided little protection. It was meant to look impressive, not to keep him alive. They chained his hands and ankles, then marched him through a tunnel toward the arena floor. The sound grew louder with each step. Thousands of alien voices cheering for blood. Jake emerged into blinding light. The grand arena was even more massive than he had imagined. Crystal walls rose hundreds of feet into the air. The crowd filled every seat, a sea of glittering alien faces hungry for spectacle. At the top of the arena sat the royal box. Even from far below, Jake could see the figure of Queen Valeth on her throne. She was tall and elegant like all her people, but there was something cold about her that even distance could not hide. Around her sat other nobles and court officials. Jake searched the royal box for any sign of Lyra, but could not make out individual faces from so far away. The guards forced him to walk to the center of the arena. Sand crunched under his feet. Dark stains in the dirt showed where other fighters had bled and died for the entertainment of the crowd. A voice boomed across the arena, amplified by the crystal walls. The announcer spoke in the musical Zephyrian language, but Jake had learned enough words to understand the basics. They were introducing him as the human warrior and promising the crowd a spectacular death. Then came the ritual that preceded every grand game. The fighter had to kneel before the royal box and speak his name and world of origin. It was meant to be humiliating, a final reminder that the conquered had no power before their conquerors. Guards forced Jake to his knees in the sand. He looked up at the royal box, squinting against the bright light reflecting off the crystal walls. "Speak, human," commanded, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Tell us who you were before you became nothing." Jake lifted his head. His voice carried clearly across the arena, amplified by the same crystal acoustics that made everything echo. "My name is Jake Morrison. I come from Earth. I was a captain in the Earth Defense Force, and I am the brother of Lisa Morrison, who died fighting for freedom." The crowd murmured at his defiant tone. Most fighters spoke with fear and desperation. Jake's voice carried pride and anger. But something else happened when Jake spoke. In the royal box, a figure suddenly stood up from her seat. Queen Valeth herself rose from her throne, her hand pressed to her chest as if she had been struck. The queen stared down at Jake with an expression of shock that even distance could not hide. Her crystalline features, normally so controlled, showed something like recognition, like wonder, like seeing a ghost. The entire arena fell silent. This was not part of the usual ritual. Queens did not react to the words of dying slaves. Jake stared back at her, confused. He had never seen this alien before. Why was she looking at him as if she knew him? Queen Valeth's lips moved, but no sound came out. She seemed to be testing something, listening to some memory that Jake's voice had awakened. Then, in a voice that carried across the silent arena, she spoke a single word. Lyra. Jake's heart stopped. The name hit him like a physical blow. Suddenly, he understood. This was Lyra's mother. The queen had somehow recognized his voice. But how? Unless, the queen's face changed again. The shock was replaced by something deeper, something that looked almost like grief. "Guards," Queen Valeth said, her voice trembling slightly. "Bring the human to me. Now." The crowd erupted in confusion. This had never happened before. The grand games were supposed to begin. The war beast was waiting in its cage. What was the queen doing? But no one questioned her orders. Guards rushed onto the arena floor and seized Jake by the arms. They dragged him up flights of stairs toward the royal box, his chains clanking with each step. As they climbed, Jake caught glimpses of the crowd. Thousands of alien faces staring at him in bewilderment. He had become part of a story they did not understand. The guards brought him before Queen Valeth's throne. Up close, she was even more imposing. Her skin really did look like living crystal, and her eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. But those ancient eyes were filled with something Jake had not expected to see. Tears. The queen stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet that only Jake could hear it. "You are the voice that spoke to my daughter in the darkness. The human who sang songs of hope to a princess who had lost her way." Jake's throat went dry. "Where is Lyra?" Queen Valeth closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Jake saw an ocean of regret. She is gone. 2 months ago, she could no longer bear the weight of what we are, what I am. She took her own life rather than continue living in an empire built on cruelty. The words hit Jake harder than any physical blow. Lyra was dead. The alien princess who had become his friend in the darkness was gone. But before she died, the queen continued, she left something behind. Words she had written, stories you told her, songs you sang, a vision of what the universe could be if we were brave enough to change. Queen Valeth stood from her throne. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she stepped down to Jake's level. You gave my daughter something I never could, she whispered. Hope. And in her final days, she gave me something I had forgotten I could feel. What was that? The queen's crystalline features softened. Shame. Queen Valeth dismissed the confused crowd from the arena. She ordered her guards to take Jake to her private chambers in the Crystal Palace. The chains remained on his wrists, but something had changed in how the aliens looked at him. The queen's private rooms were beyond anything Jake had imagined. Walls of living crystal grew from the floor and curved overhead like the inside of a giant shell. Light flowed through them in patterns that shifted like slow water. Gardens floated in the air, held up by forces Jake did not understand. But for all its beauty, the room felt cold and empty. Queen Valeth sat across from Jake at a table made from a single piece of purple stone. Between them lay sheets of crystal covered in alien writing. The marks glowed softly as if the words themselves held light. These are Lyra's writings, the queen said. Her voice was quiet now, without the commanding tone she had used in the arena. She worked on them during her final months, after she began speaking with you. Jake stared at the alien text. He could not read the symbols, but somehow he could feel the emotion behind them. What do they say? The queen picked up one of the crystal sheets. Her fingers traced the glowing marks as she translated. She writes, the human in the darkness speaks of a world where people care for each other without expecting reward, where the strong protect the weak instead of ruling them, where differences in appearance do not matter because all beings have the same capacity for love and pain. The queen set down the sheet and picked up another. Here she asks, if a human slave can show more wisdom than a Zephyrian queen, what does that say about our claim to superiority? If creatures we call beasts can create beauty through music and stories, who are the real beasts? Jake felt his chest tighten. Even in death, Lyra was still trying to build bridges between their peoples. Queen, Valeth continued reading. She describes your voice, human. She says it carried something our people have forgotten. Not just hope, but the strength to keep hoping even when everything seems lost. She wondered if this might be the true measure of a civilization. The queen set down all the crystal sheets and looked directly at Jake. My daughter was the youngest of my 3 children. Her sisters were warriors like me. They understood power, conquest, the natural order of strong ruling weak. But Lyra was different from birth. She asked questions no one else dared ask. What kind of questions? Why we needed to conquer other worlds when we had everything we needed. Why suffering was necessary when we had the power to prevent it. Why we called ourselves superior when our superiority required making others inferior. The queen stood and walked to a window that showed the crystal city stretching to the horizon. Her reflection in the transparent wall looked tired. I thought time would make her understand. That experience would teach her the harsh realities of leadership. So I sent her on that prison ship to see what happens to enemies of our empire, to watch justice being done. But she saw something else. Yes, she saw you. She heard your voice in the darkness and learned that our enemies were not the monsters we claimed them to be, that they loved and hoped and grieved just as we do, that they created beauty and meaning from nothing but will and imagination. The queen turned back to Jake. Do you know what my daughter's last words were? Jake shook his head. She said, Mother, I have learned what strength really means. It is not the power to destroy, but the courage to build something better. The human showed me this. Now I am too weak to live in a universe where such strength is called weakness. Silence filled the crystal chamber. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. She killed herself because of what I taught her, Queen Valeth said. Because she could not bear being part of what we are. Because the alternative I gave her was to become like me or die. The Queen sat back down at the table. For the first time, Jake could see past her alien features to the person underneath. A mother who had lost her child to her own cruelty. I have ruled this empire for 300 years, she continued. I have conquered 47 worlds. I have ordered the deaths of billions of beings. I told myself it was necessary, that we were bringing order to chaos, that the weak needed the guidance of the strong. What changed? I read my daughter's words. I tried to understand what she saw in you, in your people. And I realized something that terrifies me. Queen Valeth picked up another crystal sheet. Lyra wrote, "The humans have a saying. They call it the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Such a simple idea. But if we followed it, our entire civilization would crumble overnight. The Queen looked at Jake with eyes that held centuries of regret. She was right. Everything we are, everything we have built, depends on treating other beings as less than ourselves. If we acknowledged their equality, their right to exist and be free, then we would have to admit that we are not noble conquerors but common criminals on a galactic scale. Jake felt a strange mixture of sympathy and anger. This alien queen was the architect of his world's destruction. But she was also a mother grieving for a daughter who had died trying to be better than her upbringing. So what happens now? Jake asked. Queen Valeth was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I have 3 choices. I can kill you and pretend this conversation never happened. Return to ruling as I always. Have conquering and destroying until death finally claims me. What's the second choice? I can free you and a few other humans. Make small changes around the edges. Ease my conscience with minor reforms, while leaving the fundamental structure of the empire unchanged. And the third choice? The Queen stood and walked to another window. This one showed the arena where Jake had nearly died. Even from this distance, they could see work crews cleaning up after the canceled games. The third choice would destroy everything I have built. It would mean admitting that my daughter was right and I was wrong. It would mean acknowledging that every being in this empire has the same right to freedom that we claim for ourselves. That sounds like the right choice. Queen Valeth laughed, but there was no humor in it. Easy words, human. Do you understand what they would mean? Civil war across dozens of worlds. Billions of my people who believe in our superiority would never accept such changes. Many would die fighting to preserve what they see as the natural order. Many are dying already under your current system. Yes, but they are not my people. The honesty in her statement was brutal. Jake could see the war happening inside her. The love for her daughter fighting against centuries of conditioning. The desire to honor Lyra's memory battling with the fear of losing everything she had ever known. There is another problem, the Queen said. Even if I wanted to change everything tomorrow, I could not. The empire is too vast. Too many systems depend on conquest and slavery. Change would have to come slowly, carefully, or it would collapse into chaos. Then start small. Free one world. Free Earth. And then what? Your people would want revenge. They would try to destroy us just as we destroyed them. The cycle of violence would continue with different victims. Jake thought about that. About Lisa dying in that warehouse. About the billions of humans who had suffered under alien rule. The desire for revenge was real and powerful, but he also thought about Lyra crying in the darkness. About a young alien princess who had died because she could not live with her people's cruelty. Maybe revenge isn't the answer, Jake said slowly. Maybe the answer is showing you what my people are really like. What we could build together instead of what we could destroy apart. Queen Valeth turned from the window and stared at him. You would trust us? After everything we have done? I would trust you to try to be better. For Lyra's sake, if nothing else. The Queen was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. stronger, as if she had made a decision that terrified and freed her at the same time. Very well, human. Let us see if an old queen can learn new ways of ruling. Let us see if the voice that gave hope to my daughter can give wisdom to her mother. She gestured to the guard standing by the door. Remove his chains. The metal bonds fell away from Jake's wrists. For the first time in almost a year, he was not a prisoner. What happens now? He asked. Queen Valeth smiled, and for a moment, Jake could see something of Lyra in her features. Now we try to build the world my daughter dreamed of, even if it kills us both. Queen Valeth called for a gathering of the High Council. Word spread through the Crystal City that something unprecedented was about to happen. Nobles, military commanders, and administrators came from across the empire to witness what their queen would announce. Jake stood beside the throne, no longer in chains but not yet free. He wore simple clothes now instead of prison rags, but he could feel the hostile stares of every alien in the vast council chamber. To them, he was still just a human slave who had somehow caught their queen's attention. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture. Crystal pillars reached toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars in real time. Floating platforms held the council members at different levels, creating a three-dimensional meeting space that hurt Jake's human eyes to follow. Queen Valeth rose from her throne, her voice carried easily through the crystal acoustics of the chamber. Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, for 3 centuries I have led you in conquest across the galaxy. We have brought 47 worlds under our rule. We have established order where there was chaos. We have proven our superiority over lesser species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled nobles. This was the familiar rhetoric they expected to hear, but today I stand before you to say that we have been wrong. The murmurs stopped. Silence filled the chamber like a physical weight. We have not brought order. We have brought suffering. We have not proven our superiority. We have only proven our willingness to cause pain. And in doing so, we have diminished ourselves more than we have ever diminished others. A military commander on one of the floating platforms stood up. His crystalline features were sharp with anger. My queen, what madness is this? Has this human somehow poisoned your mind? Queen. Valeth looked at Jake, then back at her people. This human taught my daughter something I had failed to teach her in 20 years of life. He showed her that strength comes not from conquering others, but from lifting them up. That true power lies in creation, not destruction. She gestured for Jake to step forward. I give you Jake Morrison of Earth. He will speak to you with the same voice that comforted a dying princess and showed her a better way to live. Jake felt hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. His throat was dry, but he thought of Lisa and Lyra and found the courage to speak. People of the Zephyrian Empire, you see me as your enemy, as a creature beneath your notice. For 3 years I fought against your rule of my world. I hated you for what you took from me. The crowd stirred restlessly. They had not expected honesty from a human slave. But during my time on the prison ship, I met one of your own. Princess Lyra was exiled for showing compassion, cast aside for asking questions about justice, treated as weak because she refused to enjoy causing pain. Jake's voice grew stronger. She was not weak. She was the strongest person I have ever known. Strong enough to question everything she had been taught. Strong enough to see her enemies as people worthy of understanding. Strong enough to choose death rather than become something she despised. Several nobles hissed in anger at his words. A few others looked uncomfortable, as if Jake had touched on something they preferred not to think about. Your princess taught me that aliens and humans are not so different. We all love, we all fear, we all hope for something better for our children. The only difference is that some of us have forgotten these truths in pursuit of power. Jake looked directly at the military commander who had spoken before. You ask if I have poisoned your queen's mind. I have done nothing but show her what her daughter saw, that there is a choice between ruling through fear and leading through hope. Queen Valeth stepped forward. The human speaks truth. I have read Lyra's final writings. She saw something in human civilization that we have lost, in our own. They create beauty not to show superiority but to share joy. They help their weak not to seem noble, but because suffering is wrong. They fight impossible battles not to prove their strength, but because some things are worth dying for. The Queen's voice rang through the chamber. I propose we learn from them. I propose we try to become worthy of the power we have claimed. The reaction was immediate and violent. Half the council erupted in angry shouts. Several military commanders called for the Queen's removal. Others demanded Jake's immediate execution. But not all voices were raised in anger. Some of the younger nobles remained silent, thoughtful expressions on their crystalline features. A few actually nodded in agreement. The military commander who had first spoken stood on his platform with energy crackling around his hands. This is treason. This human has corrupted our queen with his weakness. I call for an immediate vote of no confidence. And I second that call, shouted another voice. Then another. Within minutes, the council had split into two factions. Those who supported the old ways of conquest and domination faced off against a smaller group who seemed willing to consider change. Queen Valeth raised her hand for silence. When the shouting died down, she spoke with quiet authority. Let them vote. Let them choose. But first, let them hear the rest of what I have to say. She walked to the center of the chamber, directly beneath the star-showing dome. 3 days ago, I ordered the death of this human for my entertainment. Today, I ask you to help me learn from him. This is not weakness. This is the hardest thing I have ever done. The Queen's voice carried a weight of centuries. I have ruled you through fear for 300 years. I have taught you that might makes right, that the strong deserve to rule the weak. But look, what my teaching cost me. It killed my daughter. It made me into someone she could not bear to resemble. She turned in a slow circle, addressing every member of the council. If we continue on this path, what will we become in another 300 years? What will we have built except monuments to our cruelty? What will we leave behind except the hatred of every species we have conquered? The chamber was completely silent now. Even the most hostile nobles seemed to be listening. I propose something different. I propose we take one world, Earth, and restore it to its people. Not as subjects or slaves, but as allies. Let us see if cooperation serves us better than conquest. Let us test whether this human's way of thinking can work on a larger scale. The military commander's voice was thick with disgust. And if they betray us? If they use our mercy against us? Jake spoke before the Queen could answer. Then you will have learned something valuable. But if we work together, if we build something better than either of our peoples could create alone, then you will have learned something even more valuable. What? The commander demanded. That your daughter was right, Jake said to the Queen. That strength without compassion is not strength at all. It's just cruelty wearing a crown. Queen Valeth smiled sadly. The human states our choice simply. We can remain as we are and rule over ruins. Or we can try to become something worthy of ruling at all. The vote when it came was closer than anyone expected. Nearly half the council supported the Queen's proposal. But it was not enough. The old ways won by a narrow margin. The military commander stepped forward with obvious satisfaction. The council has spoken. This madness ends now. The human dies and we return to proper order. But Queen Valeth was not finished. The council has advised me, but I am still queen. And as queen, I make this decree. Earth is to be restored to human control immediately. Jake Morrison is appointed as humanity's first ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire. Any who oppose this order oppose me directly. The chamber erupted in chaos. Several military units declared they would not follow the order. Others remained loyal to the Queen. Within hours, the first shots of a civil war were fired in the Crystal City's streets. But not all of the Empire fought against change. Younger, nobles, some who had been quietly questioning the old ways for years, rallied to Queen Valeth's side. Entire worlds declared independence from the traditionalist faction and offered to join a new kind of galactic confederation. The war lasted 3 years. Jake found himself not just as an ambassador, but as a military advisor and bridge between human and alien forces fighting for change. The princess's words, preserved in her crystal writings, became a rallying cry for those seeking a better way. Slowly, gradually, the new alliance grew stronger. Humans proved themselves as valuable allies rather than useful slaves. Other conquered species saw hope and rose up against their oppressors. The old empire cracked apart as species after species chose freedom over security. Queen Valeth did not live to see the final victory. She died in the battle for the Outer Rim territories, fighting alongside human soldiers to free alien worlds. Her last words were reportedly, "Tell my daughter her voice was heard." Jake stood in the ruins of Denver 5 years after he had been captured there. But these were different ruins now. Construction crews, both human and alien, worked together to rebuild the city. Children who had never known slavery played in parks that grew in carefully tended alien soil. He wore the simple robes of an ambassador now, but he still remembered the weight of chains. At his side stood Counselor Zeth, a young Zephyrian noble, who had been one of the first to support the Queen's revolution. "The Lyra Accords are working better than we hoped," Zeth said in his musical voice. 12 more worlds have applied for membership in the Confederation this month. Jake nodded. The Lyra Accords, named